No screams, no witnesses, just secrets. Welcome to Wolfe's Casebook. I am your host, Enigma. Drop a comment with your location. I truly value everyone. Let's uncover the truth. If there's one thing you can count on at the old brownstone on West 35th Street, it's routine. Not the kind that creeps up on you and starts asking for rent, but the kind that sits solid as bedrock and dares the world to try knocking it loose. Breakfast at 8. Orchids from 9 to 11. Lunch at 1:15. Dinner at 7:45. Give or take Wolfe's mood and Fritz's sauces. Anything that rattles that schedule had better come armed with a brass band and a notarized apology. This particular disturbance arrived at 11 minutes past 10 on a Tuesday morning, prime orchid time, and it didn't even have the decency to knock properly. The doorbell rang once, then again. Then a third time, the kind of insistent jangle that suggests either a man with no manners or a man with no time. I was in the office, feet on the desk, going through a stack of expense receipts and trying to make them look innocent. Wolfe was upstairs, ensconced among his orchids, communing with the green world and reminding himself why he tolerated the rest of humanity. I sighed, swung my feet down, and went to the door. The man standing there looked like trouble dressed up for a job interview. Mid-40s, neat grey suit, tie knotted too tight, eyes that darted just enough to make you want to check your wallet. He held his hat like it was a prop he'd forgotten to use. "Yes," I said, using my polite voice. I save it for strangers and funerals. "I need to see Nero Wolfe," he said. No introduction, no smile. "It's urgent." "Urgent usually means expensive," I told him, "and Mr. Wolfe doesn't see anyone without an appointment." He swallowed. "This is about a death." That got him 1 point and a closer look. People talk about death the way they talk about weather. Vague, uncomfortable, hoping it'll pass without soaking them. This guy said it like a fact he couldn't put down. "Whose?" I asked. He hesitated just long enough to annoy me. "Someone who isn't supposed to be dead." I leaned back against the doorframe and folded my arms. That narrows it down to about 8 billion people. "Try again." His jaw tightened. "I can pay." That was worth another point. Money talks around here, not loudly, but persistently. Still, Wolfe's orchids outrank most clients, living or otherwise. "Name?" I said. "Caleb Mortimer." I didn't recognize it, which meant either he was small-time or careful. Possibly both. "Wait here," I said, and closed the door in his face before he could argue. I went back to the office and picked up the phone. Calling Wolfe upstairs during orchid hours is like interrupting a symphony to ask where the bathroom is, but I've done worse in the line of duty. "Mr. Wolfe," I said when he answered, his voice already layered with disapproval. "There's a gentleman downstairs claiming urgency and dangling money. Says it involves a death." Silence. Then, carefully, "A death?" "Yes, sir." "During my orchid hours?" "Yes, sir." Another pause. I could picture him, vast and immobile, one hand resting on the edge of a bench, the other hovering near a leaf like a benevolent god deciding whether to smite or prune. "Does he appear deranged?" Wolfe asked. "Only in the socially acceptable ways." "Ask him to wait. I will descend in—" He paused, probably checking his watch. 6 minutes. That was as close to enthusiasm as Wolfe ever got before lunch. I returned to the door and found Mortimer pacing like a man counting steps on a lifeboat. "He'll see you," I said. "Briefly, and I suggest you make it worth his while." He nodded too quickly. "Thank you." I ushered him into the office and indicated a chair. He sat on the edge of it, hands clasped, eyes flicking to Wolfe's empty chair like it might bite him. 6 minutes later, Wolfe is nothing if not punctual. He filled the doorway, a monument in yellow pajamas and black slippers, his face set in that familiar expression of mild contempt for the universe. He lowered himself into his chair with care, adjusted his position by a fraction of an inch, and fixed Mortimer with a gaze that had reduced better men to stammering apologies. "Mr. Mortimer," Wolfe said, pronouncing each syllable as if weighing it, "you have interrupted my orchid hours. I trust you will justify this impertinence." Mortimer swallowed again. I was beginning to feel sorry for his esophagus. "Yes," he said. Yes, I believe a murder has been committed." Wolfe's eyes flicked to me for half a second. That was my cue. "Murder usually comes with a body," I said. "Do you have one of those?" "No," Mortimer said. "That's the problem." Wolfe leaned back slightly, fingers steepled. "Explain." Mortimer drew a breath. "My sister is dead." There it was. Simple. Final. He said it like a verdict. "And yet," Wolfe said, "you speak in the present tense. And you stand before me without the demeanor of a grieving man." Mortimer's mouth tightened. "Because she isn't supposed to be dead. Not yet." I raised an eyebrow. Wolfe didn't. He never wasted motion. "Your meaning," Wolfe said. "My sister, Eleanor Mortimer, was alive yesterday morning," Mortimer said. "At noon she was declared dead. No accident, no illness, just gone." "Declared by whom?" Wolfe asked. "Her doctor, her lawyer, everyone who matters." "And you?" Wolfe prompted. "I don't believe it," Mortimer said, "because I spoke to her last night." The room got quieter. Not the dramatic kind of quiet with violins and shadows, just the kind that makes you aware of the ticking clock and your own breathing. "You spoke to your sister," Wolfe said slowly, "after she was declared dead." "Yes." "How?" "On the telephone. I couldn't help it." "That's impressive," I said. "Most people wait for the séance." Mortimer shot me a look, then turned back to Wolfe. "She sounded frightened. She said someone was trying to erase her." Wolfe's eyebrows lifted a millimeter. That's a full reaction by his standards. "Erase her," Wolfe repeated. "Yes. Her work, her accounts, her identity." She said it was already happening. "And now?" Wolfe asked. "And now no one can find her," Mortimer said. "And everyone insists she's dead." Wolfe was silent for a long moment. I could practically hear the gears turning behind that expansive forehead. Finally, he said, "Mr. Mortimer, do you understand how implausible your assertion is?" "Yes," Mortimer said. "That's why I'm here." Wolfe considered him. Then, to my surprise, he asked a question that had nothing to do with death. "Why me?" Mortimer hesitated. "Because you don't move." I blinked. Wolfe didn't. "You sit," Mortimer went on, gaining confidence. "You stay in this house. You don't chase people or wave guns. You think. Whoever is doing this is very careful, very strategic. I need someone who won't be distracted by noise." For a second, I thought Wolfe might smile. He didn't, but something in his eyes warmed. Just slightly. "Flattery," Wolfe said, "is an inelegant tool, but occasionally effective." He leaned forward a fraction. "Tell me, Mr. Mortimer, if your sister is alive and someone wishes the world to believe her dead, what is at stake?" Mortimer's answer came quickly. "A fortune." Of course it did. Wolfe nodded once. "Then we are discussing not merely deception, but ambition." "Yes. And perhaps," Wolfe said softly, "murder." Mortimer looked up sharply. "But you just said—" "I said nothing of the sort," Wolfe interrupted. "I merely acknowledge the possibility. A murder may be silent, Mr. Mortimer, but it is rarely bloodless." He settled back into his chair. "I will consider your proposal." My head snapped around. That was fast. "On one condition," Wolfe added. "Anything, Mortimer said. You will permit no one, to enter this house in connection with your sister's affairs without my consent, Wolfe said. If the sanctity of my home is disturbed further, our association will end. Mortimer nodded. Agreed. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, escort Mr. Mortimer out. Obtain a retainer. I stood. With pleasure. As I opened the door for Mortimer, he paused and looked back at Wolfe. If you find her, he said quietly, you'll be saving her life. Wolfe regarded him coolly. Mr. Mortimer, I'm not in the habit of saving lives. I'm in the habit of discovering truths. After Mortimer left, I closed the door and turned back. Okay, I said. I'll bite. Why take it? Wolfe's gaze drifted toward the stairs, toward the orchids waiting upstairs. Because, he said, someone has presumed to declare a living woman dead. That is an intellectual offense. He closed his eyes. And because, Archie, if they are bold enough to do so, they may soon presume to disturb this house again. That was when I knew we were in for it. I can't write it in the exact style of Rex Stout, but I can continue with an original Nero Wolfe and Archie-style mystery that keeps the same characters, set up, and that crisp, witty, deduction-forward vibe, without copying Stout's specific phrasing or cadence. Mortimer's retainer came out of his wallet like it had been waiting to be rescued. 2 thick envelopes, the kind that make paper feel heavier than it has a right to. I counted just enough to keep Wolfe from calling it an insult, wrote a receipt, and walked Caleb Mortimer back to the stoop. He paused at the top step, collar up against the December bite. You believe me? I believe you, I said. That puts you ahead of most people who ring our bell during orchid hours. He didn't smile. He looked past me at the quiet street as if expecting it to contradict him. They'll try to make me look crazy. Someone always does, I told him. If you're lucky, they'll do it in writing. His eyes snapped back. What should I do? Go home. Don't drink. Don't call anyone you don't trust. And if you get another call from your sister, don't talk long. Get details, location, names, anything. Then call us. He nodded, quick and tight, and went down the steps and into a cab he'd flagged like a man who didn't want to be seen waiting. When I got back inside, the brownstone felt the way it always does when Wolfe takes a case. Same furniture, same smells. Polish, old books, Fritz's cooking drifting up like a promise. But the air's pressure changes. The house doesn't become haunted. It becomes interested. Wolfe was in his chair, eyes half-lidded, as if meditating on the moral decay of mankind. I went to my desk, sat, and started a clean sheet in my notebook. Let's put him on the board, I said. Caleb Mortimer. Mid-40s. Nervous, but not sloppy. Says his sister Eleanor declared dead at noon yesterday. He spoke to her by phone last night. She claimed someone's erasing her. Stakes. A fortune. Wolfe's lips moved slightly. That was him acknowledging the list. The phone call, he said. Yeah, I said. That's the part that wants a flashlight. Assume, Wolfe said, that the call occurred. What follows? I didn't love the word assume, but I played along. Either Eleanor is alive and the death declaration is a manufactured fact, or Eleanor is dead and someone imitated her voice to steer Caleb. Or Caleb is lying. Wolfe opened his eyes fully. You consider him lying? I consider everything, I said. It's my hobby. Wolfe's fingers steepled. We shall not begin with the most tedious possibility. If his sister is alive, the declaration of death serves a function. Control, of property, of reputation, of movement. And if she's dead, I said, the phone call serves a function. Misdirection, panic, maybe a lure. Wolfe's gaze went past me, to the wall of books he used the way other men use clubs. The phrase erase her is revealing. Not kill, erase. Paperwork murder, I said. Neat, quiet, and it doesn't stain the carpets. Wolfe's eyes flicked at the office rug as if checking for stains. You will go to Mr. Mortimer's residence? Sure, I said. I'll just tell Fritz I'm leaving and watch his face collapse. You will also, Wolfe continued, verify the reported death. Name of physician, name of lawyer, location of body. Location of body, I repeated. That's always a crowd pleaser. Wolfe leaned a fraction forward. Archie, do not be frivolous. I'll try, I said. No promises. He reached toward the side table where the telephone sat like an obedient servant. First, we will have the facts in our possession before we speak to anyone else. I dislike speaking in ignorance. He dialed a number from memory. Wolfe's memory is the kind that doesn't forget. It just files. When the line clicked, he said, Mr. Kramer, good morning. I couldn't hear Inspector Kramer's voice, but I could imagine it. Gravelly suspicion with a side of irritation. Wolfe's tone stayed smooth. I require information on a reported death. Eleanor Mortimer, declared yesterday at noon. I wish to know if your office has any record of it. He listened. His face didn't change, which meant the other end was being predictably unhelpful. Yes, Wolfe said. You may regard it as none of my concern, but you would be mistaken. I have been retained. Another pause. Wolfe's mouth tightened a hair. Very well, I will be brief. Is there a certificate? Was a body examined? Was an autopsy ordered? He listened again. I watched him the way I watch a cat at a mouse hole. Wolfe doesn't chase, he waits, but the moment he pounces, the mouse doesn't get a second chance. Ah, Wolfe said softly. So there is a certificate. He glanced at me. Signed by Dr. Lionel Harrow. I wrote it down. Yes, Wolfe continued into the phone, and the attending attorney is... He listened, then said, Thank you, that will suffice for the moment. He hung up with the delicate finality he applied to most of humanity. Well? I asked. Wolfe exhaled through his nose. The death is official enough to have a certificate. Dr. Lionel Harrow signed it. The attorney involved is Miriam Lasker. Kramer was irritatingly pleased to tell me that the Mortimer matter is private unless a complaint is lodged. Which means, I said, if someone's getting erased, they're doing it with receipts. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Precisely. I stood, grabbed my coat and checked my pockets, wallet, notebook, pen, the little cynicism I keep for emergencies. As I reached the hall, Fritz appeared with the timing of a man who has been listening with both ears and his whole soul. He was holding a tray, and on it sat a small cup of coffee. Black, strong the way he makes it when he thinks I'll need backbone. Archie, he said gently, you are leaving. Only temporarily, I told him. His eyebrows rose toward the ceiling. During the day. An outrage, I know, I said. But if I don't go, Mr. Wolfe will start doing things himself, and then we'll have a real crisis. Fritz's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but worried. Be careful. The house likes you. Tell the house I'll be back before it misses me, I said, and took the coffee with a grateful nod. Outside, the cold hit like a reprimand. I hailed a cab and gave the driver Mortimer's address, then settled back and watched the city slide by. People walking fast, eyes down, each one carrying their own private emergencies. If Eleanor Mortimer was alive and someone had declared her dead, then somebody was either very clever or had very good friends in the right places. And if someone had faked her voice on the phone, then somebody had planned for Caleb Mortimer to come to us. Either way, the quiet Wolfe had talked about the intellectual offense wasn't just a concept, it was a strategy. And strategies don't end when you notice them, they start. The cab dropped me in front of a limestone building that tried very hard to look respectable and mostly succeeded. Mortimer lived on the 5th floor. Doorman, polished brass. a lobby that smelled faintly of furniture polish and money that didn't like being questioned. I gave the doorman my name and got a look that said he'd been warned about me or people like me. Either way, he waved me through. Caleb Mortimer opened the door himself. He looked worse than he had an hour earlier. Tie loosened, jacket off, eyes rimmed with the kind of red that comes from staring at the same thought until it starts staring back. "You came fast," he said. "I had a cab and a reason," I told him, stepping inside. "Any changes?" He shook his head. "No calls, no messages." "Nothing." "That might be good news," I said. "Or it might mean whoever's playing accountant with your sister's life is very tidy." His apartment was neat in a way that suggested control rather than comfort. Books arranged by height, not subject. Furniture that matched too well. On a side table near the window sat a telephone, landline, beige, old-fashioned enough to feel deliberate. I pointed at it. "That's the one?" "Yes," he said quickly. "That's where she called." "Mind if I look?" He hesitated, then nodded. I crossed over and lifted the receiver, listening to the dead hum. No answering machine attached, no visible caller ID unit. "You get many calls?" I asked. "Not usually," he said. "Mostly business. That call—" He stopped, swallowed. It was her voice. I'd know it anywhere. "People say that," I said. "Sometimes they're right." I checked the phone base, then the wall jack. No obvious tampering. If someone had routed the call, they'd done it upstream. Clean, professional, invisible. "Tell me exactly what she said," I said. Mortimer closed his eyes. "She told me not to trust the paperwork. She said things were being moved, names changed. She said if anyone told me she was dead, it meant they were already too late." "Did she say where she was?" I asked. "No," I asked. "She said it wasn't safe." "Did she mention anyone by name?" He hesitated again. That was becoming a habit. "She said Miriam." I wrote it down even though I already had it. "Last name?" "Lasker, her attorney." That tracked. "Anyone else?" "She mentioned Dr. Harrow," Mortimer said. "She said he was sorry but obedient." That tracked too in a way I didn't like. "Okay," I said. "Now let's talk about your sister." He looked up sharply. "What about her?" "What kind of trouble does Eleanor Mortimer get into when she's alive?" I asked. "The kind that attracts erasers." He rubbed a hand over his face. "She's meticulous. Brilliant. She handles investments for private clients, very private clients." "Define very," I said. "People who prefer not to be noticed," he said. "Family offices, trusts, shells inside shells." "Money that wears sunglasses," I said. "Any enemies?" "Competitors," he said. "Former partners, clients who didn't like being told no." "Anyone who'd benefit if she stopped existing on paper?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower. "There's a trust, my father's. Eleanor controls it. If she's declared dead, control transfers." "To whom?" I asked. "To me," he said. "Temporarily, until probate." I let that sit between us. "That's awkward." "I know how it looks," he said quickly. "That's why I came to Wolfe. I didn't want this." "Intent and optics don't always shake hands," I said. "Who else?" "Her assistant," Mortimer said. "Julia Brand, loyal, efficient, knows everything Eleanor does." "Assistants always know everything," I said. "That's why they're dangerous." I moved to the desk near the window. Papers were stacked with care. Bank statements, correspondence, a folder labeled EM Personal. I didn't open anything without asking. Wolfe has rules. So do I. "You mind if I check something?" I asked. He nodded, distracted. I scanned the room again. No pictures of Eleanor. That struck me. "No photos?" I asked. He looked around, surprised. "She hates having her picture taken." Still, I said. Most people keep at least one. He shrugged. She said images could be used against you. That sounded like Eleanor Mortimer, alive or otherwise. My phone buzzed. I checked it. Text from Saul Panzer. In town. Free if needed. I smiled. Things were aligning, which usually meant they were about to cross. Listen, I said to Mortimer. I'm going to step out. I want to talk to Dr. Harrow and Ms. Lasker. You stay put. Lock the door. If you get another call, record it if you can. And call us immediately. He nodded, eyes fixed on the phone like it might sprout teeth. As I left, I felt it again. That pressure, that sense that the quiet wasn't empty. Someone had gone to a lot of trouble to make Eleanor Mortimer disappear without leaving a mess. And that kind of effort isn't about death. It's about control. Back in the cab, heading toward a doctor with a guilty conscience and an attorney with too many answers, I thought about Wolfe in his chair, waiting. He'd said strategies don't end when you notice them. They tighten. Dr. Lionel Harrow's office occupied the second floor of a medical building that had seen better decades and now made do with better billing. The brass directory downstairs still shined, but the carpet on the stairs told the truth. Thin, tired, and walked on by people who didn't want to linger. I checked my watch. Late afternoon. Doctors hate that hour. It's when patience runs out and excuses pile up. Harrow himself looked like a man who'd been losing arguments with his mirror. Early 60s, rimless glasses, hair combed carefully over a scalp that refused to cooperate. His smile arrived late and left early. Yes, he said, blocking the doorway with professional politeness. Archie Goodwin, I said. I work for Nero Wolfe. That did it. His eyes flicked left, then right, as if expecting Wolfe to be parked behind a ficus. I'm busy, he said. I won't take long, I told him. Neither did Eleanor Mortimer, apparently. He stiffened. I can't discuss patients. I'm not asking about a patient, I said. I'm asking about a signature. That bought me 30 seconds and a sigh. He stepped aside and let me in. His office smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. No diplomas on the wall, just framed certificates, the kind that reassure insurance companies. I sat without being invited. You signed a death certificate yesterday, I said. Eleanor Mortimer. Noon. Harrow folded his hands. They trembled, just a little. Yes. Cause of death? I asked. Cardiac event, he said quickly. Sudden. Body examined? I asked. Yes. Where? I asked. At her residence, he said. Which one? I asked. He hesitated. Her townhouse, on East 72nd. I filed that away. Who else was present? Her attorney, Harrow said. Ms. Lasker. Of course, I said. Doctor, did you personally verify Eleanor Mortimer's identity? He bristled. I've been her physician for 8 years. That's not what I asked, I said. Silence. Then, quietly, yes. I leaned forward. Doctor, if someone you trusted placed a body in front of you and told you it was Eleanor Mortimer, would you question it? His jaw tightened. Are you accusing me of incompetence? No, I said. I'm asking about obedience. He looked at the door. This conversation is over. Not yet, I said. Did Eleanor Mortimer ever tell you she was afraid? That stopped him. His shoulders sagged a fraction. She asked, hypothetical questions. About disappearing, I asked. About documentation, he said. About what constitutes proof. And what did you tell her? I asked. That proof is a matter of procedure, he said. Forms, witnesses, compliance. Funny thing about procedures, I said. They work even when they're wrong. I stood. Doctor, if you helped erase a living woman, you're going to need a very good explanation very soon. I suggest you start drafting it. He didn't reply. He just sat there, staring at his hands like they'd betrayed him. Outside, I took a breath and checked my notes. Harrow hadn't cracked, but he'd bent. That meant pressure from above, not below. Miriam Lasker's office was 3 blocks away and a world apart. Glass, steel, receptionists who smiled like they were billing you for it. She kept me waiting exactly 6 minutes, which told me she liked control but not mess. She was tall, sharp-eyed, dressed in grey that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Mr. Goodwin," she said, extending a hand. "To what do I owe—" "Eleanor Mortimer," I said, not taking the hand. Her smile didn't falter. "A tragedy." "Or a performance," I said. Her eyes cooled. "Careful." "Always," I said. "You were present when Dr. Harrow pronounced her dead." "Yes," she said, "as her legal representative." "Then you won't mind answering a simple question," I said. "Where is the body now?" "In secure custody," she said. "That's vague," I said. "Try again." She studied me. "Why?" "Because her brother spoke to her last night," I said. "On the phone." That landed. Not hard, but true. "Impossible," she said. "Then we agree on one thing," I said. "Something here doesn't exist on paper the way it should." I turned to leave. "I'll be in touch." Outside, dusk was settling in, the city dimming its edges. I called Wolfe from the corner. "Harrow's obedient," I said. "Lasker's confident, too confident, and there's a townhouse on 72nd that may or may not contain a dead woman." Wolfe was silent for a moment. Then, "Good. The circle is forming." "Yeah," I said. "And it's tightening." "Return," Wolfe said. "We will prepare." As I headed back toward the brownstone, I had the uneasy feeling that Eleanor Mortimer wasn't just being erased. She was being replaced. The brownstone greeted me the way it always does, solid, unimpressed, faintly judgmental. I let myself in and found Wolfe already installed in his chair, a tray beside him bearing the remains of an early dinner. Fritz hovered nearby, attentive but discreet, like a guardian angel with a ladle. "You're punctual," Wolfe observed, without looking at me. "I try," I said, shedding my coat. The city was cooperative. "Sit," Wolfe said. "Report." I did, and gave it to him clean. Harrow's trembling hands, Lasker's confidence, the townhouse on East 72nd, the phrase secure custody delivered like a legal lullaby. When I finished, Wolfe closed his eyes. Not in fatigue, never that, but in concentration, as if arranging pieces on a board only he could see. "Dr. Harrow," he said finally, "is a man who obeys authority when it is presented with proper credentials. Ms. Lasker is authority." "And Eleanor?" I asked. "Eleanor," Wolfe said, "is either alive and complicit in her own erasure, or alive and resisting it, or dead and inconvenient." "That narrows it down," I said. "You spoke to Miss Lasker of the telephone call?" Wolfe continued. "Yeah. She didn't like it." "No," Wolfe said. "She would not. A voice from beyond the grave disrupts orderly proceedings." I leaned back. "You think Eleanor staged the call?" "Possibly," Wolfe said. "But more interesting is the necessity of the call. If Eleanor wished only to disappear, she would not alert her brother. She would vanish quietly, leaving professionals to manage the aftermath." "So the call was a warning," I said. "Or a plea." "Or a trap," Wolfe said. "For us." I grinned. "Flattered." Wolfe ignored that. "You mentioned a townhouse. We will not go there." I blinked. "We won't?" "No," Wolfe said. "It is too obvious. If there is a body, or a substitute, it is meant to be found only by those with standing. We lack that." "Speak for yourself," I said. "I can stand in a lot of places." Wolfe opened one eye. "Archie." "Fine," I said. "What's the move?" Wolfe's gaze shifted to the side table, to a small, unassuming spice jar Fritz had placed there earlier in the day, paprika, labeled in Fritz's careful hand. It was not where it belonged. I was sure of that. Fritz was meticulous to the point of reverence. "Has Fritz rearranged the spices?" Wolfe asked mildly. I frowned. "Not unless the apocalypse came with a souffle." Wolfe nodded once. "Someone has been in this room." I sat up straighter. "When?" "After dinner," Wolfe said. "Before your return." Fritz stiffened. "Mr. Wolfe, no one entered." "Except," Wolfe said gently, "Miss Lasker." Fritz's eyes widened. "She was shown in briefly. She wished to leave documents." I swore softly. "She was here?" "Yes," Fritz said. "She did not stay long." Wolfe's eyes were open now, sharp and bright. "Did she touch anything?" Fritz hesitated. "She stood near the desk." I crossed to it and checked the top drawer. A folder was misaligned by a fraction of an inch. Inside, one sheet was missing, the copy of Eleanor Mortimer's investment summary Wolfe had asked me to prepare from public filings. "Well," I said, "that answers one question." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Ms. Lasker wished to know what we know." "And now she does," I said. "At least partially." "Which means," Wolfe said, "she is uncertain." That perked me up. Uncertainty makes people sloppy. "Or desperate," Wolfe said. "We must encourage the former." He reached for the phone. Saul Panzer. While he dialed, I thought about Miriam Lasker standing in this room, careful not to disturb too much, confident enough to disturb anything at all. She hadn't taken money or files of obvious value. She'd taken a measure. Saul answered, his voice brisk. Wolfe spoke quietly, precisely, assigning tasks like a conductor cueing strings. "You will observe, Miss Lasker," Wolfe said. "Discreetly. Also Julia Brand, assistant to Eleanor Mortimer. Report any deviation from routine." He hung up and looked at me. "Archie, you will return to Mr. Mortimer." "Babysitting?" I asked. "Protection," Wolfe said. "If Eleanor Mortimer is alive, her brother is leverage. If she is dead, he is liability." "And if he gets another call?" I asked. Wolfe's mouth curved. Not a smile, but something close. "Then, Archie, we listen very carefully." As I reached for my coat again, Fritz appeared with another cup of coffee, his expression troubled. "The house," he said softly, "does not like being tested." I took the cup. "Neither do liars," I said. Outside, night had settled fully. The city lit up like a chessboard mid-game. Somewhere in it, Eleanor Mortimer, or someone wearing her voice, was waiting for the next move. And so were we. Caleb Mortimer didn't like being guarded, but he liked the alternative even less. When I rang his bell that night, he opened the door with the chain still on and relief leaking through the crack like light under a closet door. "You came back," he said. "Against my better judgment," I told him. "Let me in." The apartment felt different after dark. Shadows thicker, silence louder. He locked the door behind me with care that bordered on ritual. "Anything?" I asked. "No," he said. "No calls, no knocks. I keep expecting the phone to ring." "That's how it works," I said. "Waiting does half the damage." I took the chair opposite the phone and made myself comfortable. If the call came, I wanted to be close enough to hear the first syllable, the way it landed, the way it breathed. "You didn't tell me something earlier," I said. He stiffened. "What?" "You didn't tell me why your sister trusted you," I said. "Really trusted you?" "Enough to call you when she thought she was being erased." He stared at the carpet. "Because I stay out of her world. I don't manage her money. I don't attend her meetings. I'm invisible." "Until you aren't," I said. "Who else knew about the trust transfer?" He looked up. "Lasker, Julia Brand." Dr. Harrow knew there was a trust, not the details. Anyone else? I pressed. My father's executor, he said. But he died last year. Convenient, I said. He flinched. This isn't a game. No, I agreed. It's accounting. The phone rang. It wasn't loud. Just a clean, ordinary ring, the kind that belongs to bad news wearing a polite hat. Mortimer froze. I held up a hand and reached for the receiver, lifting it just enough to listen without answering. A breath, then a voice. Caleb. It was soft, controlled, female, familiar in the way family voices are, less about sound than rhythm. I met Mortimer's eyes and nodded once. He picked up. Ellie? His voice cracked. Don't say my name, the voice said quickly. Listen. They know about Wolfe now. I felt the room contract. They were in the house, she continued. Not him, the woman, the lawyer. Mortimer swallowed. Where are you? I can't tell you, the voice said, but I need you to trust me. Tomorrow there will be a meeting, all of them. You must go. Go where? He demanded. Where they tell you, she said. Say nothing. Agree to everything. And you? He asked. A pause. Just a fraction too long. I'll be there, the voice said, in the only way I can. The line went dead. I slowly lowered the receiver and replaced it. Mortimer stared at the phone like it had bitten him. That was her, he said. You heard her. I heard a woman, I said carefully, who knew details. She knew about Wolfe, he insisted, about the house. So does Lasker, I said. So does anyone with ears. He sagged into a chair. She sounded afraid. Fear can be performed, I said. So can hope. I stepped into the hall and called Wolfe. It happened, I said. Another call. She claims Lasker knows about you. Says there'll be a meeting tomorrow. Wants Mortimer compliant. Wolfe didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was level. Excellent, he said. Did you observe hesitation? Yes, I said. At the end. Good, Wolfe said. Fear produces haste. Haste produces error. What do you want me to do? I asked. Remain, Wolfe said. Ensure Mr. Mortimer attends the meeting. And Archie? Yes? If Eleanor Mortimer appears in any form other than corporeal, attend closely to who reacts. I went back inside. Mortimer looked up, searching my face for permission to believe. Wolfe says go, I told him. Say yes to everything. Let them think you're manageable. And if it's a trap, he asked. Then it's one Wolfe helped set, I said, which makes it less dangerous for us and more dangerous for them. He nodded slowly. She said she'd be there. Maybe, I said. Or maybe someone wants us all in one room. I looked at the phone again. It sat there, innocent and smug. Either way, I said. Tomorrow, the erasing stops. I didn't know yet whether we'd be finding Eleanor Mortimer alive, dead, or replaced by a legal fiction, but I knew something else. No one plays games with Nero Wolfe's house and walks away clean, and tomorrow they'd all be playing where he could see them. Morning came the way it always does in New York, loud, impatient, and convinced it's doing you a favor. I spent the night on Mortimer's couch, fully dressed, one eye on the phone and the other on the door. Nothing happened, which was either a gift or a warning. By 8:30, Mortimer was pacing with a cup of coffee he hadn't tasted. They haven't called yet, he said for the third time. They will, I said. People who arrange meetings like to feel in charge of the clock. At 9:02, the phone rang. Mortimer jumped. I didn't. He answered, listened, nodded twice, and hung up. Miss Lasker, he said. 10:30, her office. Of course, I said. Neutral ground with a legal scent. What do I do? He asked. What she told you to do, I said. Agree to everything. especially the parts that sound generous. I walked him out and put him in a cab with instructions to text me when he arrived. Then I took my own ride back to the brownstone. Wolfe doesn't like to be late to his own traps. He was in the office when I arrived, already dressed, already thinking. Saul Panzer stood near the door, hat in hand, looking like a man who had opinions but knew when to wait. "Report," Wolfe said. Saul spoke first. "Julia Brand arrived at Ms. Lasker's office at 8:15. She's been there since. No visible agitation. Ms. Lasker placed 2 calls after midnight, one to Dr. Harrow, one to an unlisted number." "Which you traced," Wolfe said. Saul nodded. "A townhouse on East 72nd. Wolfe's eyes gleamed. The circle tightens. I filled in the rest. Last night's call, the instruction to attend, the promise that Eleanor would be there. "An interesting phrase," Wolfe said. "Intentionally ambiguous." "You think Eleanor's alive?" I asked. "I think," Wolfe said, "that Eleanor Mortimer is the pivot. Whether living or dead, she is essential to their design. Therefore, she will be invoked." The phone rang. Wolfe lifted a finger to silence us and answered. "Yes, Ms. Lasker," he said mildly. "You may speak." I couldn't hear her, but I could feel her, controlled urgency dressed as courtesy. "Indeed," Wolfe said. "Mr. Mortimer informed me of your invitation. Yes, I approve." "No, I will not attend." A pause. Wolfe smiled faintly. "You will find, madam, that my absence is often more instructive than my presence." He listened, then said, "My associate will observe. Good day." He hung up and looked at me. She wished me to attend. "Bold," I said. "Necessary," Wolfe replied. "She desires legitimacy. I refuse to grant it." "What's the play?" I asked. "You will attend as Mr. Mortimer's shadow," Wolfe said. "Say little, observe much. At precisely 11:20, you will excuse yourself and return here." "Mid-meeting?" I asked. "Yes," Wolfe said. "Disruption is informative." "And Eleanor?" I asked. Wolfe leaned back. "If she is alive, she will attempt contact once the meeting destabilizes. If she is dead, someone will attempt to simulate her." Saul frowned. "You think they'll use the voice again?" "I think," Wolfe said, "they cannot resist it." At 10:15, I was outside Lasker's building, watching Mortimer go in with the posture of a man walking into a dentist's office without anesthesia. I followed, nodded to the receptionist, and took a seat where I could see everything without being seen. Julia Brand arrived moments later, early 30s, composed, eyes sharp enough to cut paper. She glanced at Mortimer, then away. No warmth, no hostility. Professional distance like a wall with good lighting. They went in. I waited. Through the frosted glass, voices rose and fell. Lasker's smooth certainty, Mortimer's cautious agreement, Julia's occasional interjection like a footnote. At 11:15, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. "Archie," a woman's voice said. Calm, controlled, familiar. "Eleanor," I said. "Good," the voice said. "You're where you should be. Listen carefully." "I am," I said. "They think this ends today," she continued. "It doesn't. When you leave, they'll panic. One of them will make a mistake." "Which one?" I asked. A pause. "Shorter than last time. The one who believes paperwork is reality," she said. "It isn't." The line went dead. At 11:20, I stood, knocked once, and entered. I murmured an apology, took Mortimer by the elbow, and said we had to go. Lasker's smile tightened. Julia Brand's eyes flicked to the phone on the desk. That's when I knew. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once. "Good," he said. "They are committed." "To what?" I asked. To being wrong, Wolfe said. Now we wait. For the final error. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't passive. It was listening. Waiting with Wolfe is an education in restraint. He didn't pace, didn't fidget, didn't ask for updates. He sat in his chair as if time itself was something he'd scheduled between lunch and dinner. Fritz moved quietly through the house, the faint clink of china the only proof the world still operated on lesser priorities. At 12:40, the phone rang. Wolfe lifted it on the second ring. Yes. I watched his face. One eyebrow rose, then settled. I see, Wolfe said. No, I will not come to you. You will come to me. A pause. Wolfe's mouth tightened. Madame, he said calmly, you have already trespassed once today. I'm offering you an opportunity to correct an error. He listened again, then. 1 hour. Bring Dr. Harrow and Miss Brand. Mr. Mortimer will also attend. Decline, and I will involve the authorities in a manner that will be inefficient for you. He hung up and looked at me. Ms. Lasker has panicked. That didn't take long, I said. She attempted, Wolfe continued, to relocate the meeting. That indicates loss of control. And Eleanor? I asked. Wolfe's eyes were steady. We will see whether she exists or merely persists. By 2 o'clock, the brownstone had that charged feeling it gets before a confrontation, quiet but alert, like a courtroom before the jury files in. Saul Panzer arrived and took up position near the door, unobtrusive but present. Wolfe made one adjustment to his desk, slid a blotter 1/2 inch to the left, and declared himself ready. They arrived together, which told me more than if they'd come apart. Miriam Lasker entered first, composed but brittle around the edges, followed by Dr. Harrow, who looked like he'd aged a year since yesterday. Julia Brand came last, carrying a slim folder and watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. Mortimer trailed them, pale but upright. Wolfe waited until they were seated. He didn't offer greetings. Ms. Lasker, he said, you have abused my hospitality, falsified a death, and attempted to manipulate my associate. I find this discourteous. Lasker drew a breath. Mr. Wolfe, this is a misunderstanding. No, Wolfe said. It is an overconfidence. He turned his gaze to Harrow. Doctor, you examined a body presented to you as Eleanor Mortimer. You accepted this representation without sufficient verification because it was convenient. Harrow opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Wolfe continued. Ms. Brand, you prepared the documentation necessary to render Eleanor Mortimer legally non-existent. You believe that identity is a function of records. Julia Brand's jaw tightened. That's how the world works. Wolfe nodded. Indeed. Until it does not. He folded his hands. Eleanor Mortimer anticipated this. She constructed a contingency. Lasker leaned forward. There is no contingency. Eleanor is alive, Wolfe said quietly. The word landed hard. Mortimer gasped. Julia Brand didn't move. Lasker smiled thinly. Prove it, Lasker said. Wolfe gestured with one finger. Archie. I stepped to the desk and placed a small digital recorder on the blotter. This, Wolfe said, is a recording of a voice analysis conducted by an acquaintance of mine. The telephone calls received by Mr. Mortimer were not simulations. They were live transmissions routed through a private exchange maintained by Eleanor Mortimer herself. Julia Brand's eyes flicked just once to Lasker. She established it, Wolfe continued, precisely because she foresaw betrayal. She understood that to control money, one must first control identity. Lasker laughed softly. Even if she's alive, she's legally dead. Wolfe smiled then, a rare and unpleasant sight. That is your error. Eleanor Mortimer recorded a notarized declaration contesting any future certification of her death unless verified by 3 independent parties. one of whom is her brother. He looked at Mortimer. Which you never obtained. Silence spread through the room. She also, Wolfe added, instructed her assets to freeze upon any attempt to transfer control under conditions of disputed identity. As of noon yesterday, no one can access them. Julia Brand's composure cracked. You can't? I can, Wolfe said. And I have. He leaned back. Ms. Lasker, you attempted to erase a woman who understood erasure better than you. Dr. Harrow, you allowed procedure to replace judgment. Ms. Brand, Wolfe's eyes settled on her. You mistook efficiency for loyalty. Julia Brand stood abruptly. She told me to. Indeed, Wolfe said. She told you to prepare for her disappearance. She did not tell you to finalize it. Lasker rose, fury breaking through polish. Where is she? Wolfe's voice was mild. Safe, and uninterested in seeing you. He reached for the phone. Inspector Kramer will arrive shortly. Mortimer exhaled, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob. As Saul opened the door to the approaching footsteps, Wolfe closed his eyes, satisfied. Gentlemen, he said softly, and ladies, this is why silence is dangerous only to those who do not understand it. The house seemed to agree. Inspector Kramer arrived with the air of a man who dislikes being summoned but enjoys being right. He took in the room in a single sweep, Lasker rigid with anger, Harrow pale and sweating, Julia Brand standing too straight, Mortimer gripping the arms of his chair like they might drift away, and then looked at Wolfe. All right, Kramer said. Start talking. Wolfe inclined his head a fraction. I have already finished. That earned him a scowl, but Kramer turned to me. Goodwin. I gave him the short version, which for me still runs long. Phony death certification, controlled documentation, a lawyer with ambition, a doctor with weak knees, and an assistant who mistook preparation for permission. I left out nothing that mattered and nothing that didn't. Kramer listened, grunting at intervals like punctuation. When I finished, he turned to Lasker. You want to explain why a living woman was declared dead under your supervision? He asked. Lasker opened her mouth, closed it, then smiled tightly. This is a civil matter. Funny, Kramer said. Looks criminal from where I'm standing. Harrow wilted. Julia Brand's eyes dropped to the floor. Mortimer said nothing. He didn't need to. Kramer sighed and rubbed his face. All right, we'll take statements. Nobody leaves. Wolfe spoke again. Inspector, before you proceed, there is a communication you should hear. He nodded to me. I picked up the recorder and pressed play. Eleanor Mortimer's voice filled the room. Calm, precise, unmistakably alive. If this is being heard, the recording said, then my contingency has been activated. I'm not dead. I have not authorized any declaration of my death. Any attempt to do so constitutes fraud. The silence afterward felt earned. Kramer stared at the recorder. Where is she? Wolfe's answer was immediate. Elsewhere. That's not an answer. It is the only one you will receive, Wolfe said. Ms. Mortimer will present herself when she deems it advantageous. Until then, you have sufficient cause to proceed. Kramer studied Wolfe, then the others. He exhaled. I hate it when you're right. So do many people, Wolfe said mildly. They were escorted out in stages. Harrow first, nearly collapsing with relief at being told what to do. Julia Brand next, her expression shuttered but thoughtful, as if recalculating loyalty in real time. Lasker last, her composure finally cracking as she shot one last look at Wolfe that promised litigation and delivered nothing. Mortimer lingered in the doorway. She's really alive, he said softly. Yes, Wolfe said. And she will remain so, provided she continues to be cautious. Can I see her? Mortimer asked. In due course, Wolfe said. For now, you may sleep. Mortimer nodded, gratitude plain on his face, and left. The house settled. Fritz appeared as if on cue, already clearing cups, already restoring order. Saul Panzer tipped his hat and slipped out without a word. I sat across from Wolfe and let the quiet stretch. "So," I said finally. "No body, no blood, just a lot of paper cuts." Wolfe's mouth twitched. "Paper cuts can be lethal, Archie, when applied repeatedly." "You enjoyed this one," I said. "I enjoyed the correction," Wolfe replied. Ms. Lasker believed control was a matter of documents. She neglected the intellect. "And Eleanor?" I asked. "You going to tell me where she is?" "No," Wolfe said, "because it is irrelevant." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when?" "Since her objective was achieved," Wolfe said. "She wished to expose betrayal, secure her assets, and demonstrate that identity is not granted by others." "That's poetic," I said. "It is practical," Wolfe corrected. "Poetry is inefficient." Dinner was announced. Wolfe rose with care, dignity restored to the minute. As he reached the doorway, he paused. "Archie," he said, "you did well." I grinned. Compliments from Wolfe are rare enough to frame. Later, as I headed for my room, the phone rang once. Soft, respectful. I picked it up. "Archie," Eleanor Mortimer's voice said. "Thank you." "You're welcome," I said. "Stay alive." She laughed quietly. "I intend to." The line went dead. Downstairs, Wolfe was already eating, the brownstone back in its proper rhythm. The house had been disturbed, tested, and satisfied. I went to bed thinking about silence, how dangerous it can be if you underestimate it, and how powerful if you know exactly when to let it speak. Sleep didn't come easily that night. It never does when a case ends without a body and with too many moving parts still humming quietly in the background. The brownstone had settled, yes, but it wasn't asleep. It was alert in the way a locked vault is alert, confident nothing inside was about to wander off. I was halfway through my second bad idea of the night, counting ceiling cracks, when I heard Wolfe's bell. Once. Precise. No urgency, but no room for debate either. I pulled on a robe and padded downstairs. Wolfe was in the office, fully awake, fully dressed, his bulk arranged in the chair as if he'd never left it. The desk was clear except for one object, the paprika jar Fritz had misplaced earlier. "Sit, Archie," Wolfe said. I did. "If this is about insomnia, I charge extra." "It is about completion," Wolfe replied. "That sounds final," I said, which makes me nervous. Wolfe regarded the spice jar. Miss Lasker committed one final error. "Besides attempting intellectual homicide?" I asked. "She touched this," Wolfe said, indicating the jar. "It was unnecessary." I frowned. "You already nailed her." "Yes," Wolfe said. "But I prefer certainty to sufficiency." He reached for the phone and dialed without consulting a number. When the line connected, he said, "Inspector Kramer, good evening." A pause. Wolfe continued, "I believe you will find that Ms. Lasker has, within the last 2 hours, attempted to access a safety deposit box registered under a dormant corporate entity. The attempt will have failed." Another pause. Wolfe smiled faintly, because Eleanor Mortimer anticipated it. "You will also find Ms. Lasker's fingerprints on an object in my office she had no reason to touch." He hung up and looked at me. "Now it is complete." "You couldn't let it end tidy," I said. "You had to put a bow on it." "Tidy endings are a form of laziness," Wolfe replied. "Truth requires redundancy." I yawned. "That's my cue to go back to bed." "Not yet," Wolfe said. "There's an ethical question to consider." I blinked. "From you, that's practically a cliffhanger." "Eleanor Mortimer orchestrated her own disappearance," Wolfe said. "She manipulated perception, exploited trust, and induced others to commit crimes." "Yeah," I said. but she also caught the people trying to erase her. Indeed, Wolfe said. The question is whether her actions were justified. I considered it. She didn't steal. She didn't frame anyone for something they weren't already doing. She just let them run. Wolfe nodded. A controlled experiment. Exactly, I said. The mice set their own traps. Wolfe's eyes closed briefly. Intent matters. Sure, I said. So does outcome. He opened his eyes. You are becoming tiresomely pragmatic. Occupational hazard, I said. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Wolfe said, She will return. Eleanor? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. Not immediately, but eventually. People who value control dislike exile. Think she'll stop by to say thank you properly? I asked. No, Wolfe said. She has already done so. I smiled. Fair. Morning came softer than the day before, like the city was giving us credit for good behavior. At breakfast, Fritz was in excellent spirits, which told me all I needed to know about the house's approval. The paper arrived with the usual bad news, but tucked into the financial section was a small item. Prominent attorney Miriam Lasker under investigation for alleged fraud. No details, no conclusions, just the beginning of a very long paragraph she wouldn't enjoy reading. Caleb Mortimer called just after 10. He sounded lighter. She left me a message, he said. A real one. She's safe? That's good, I said. Try to keep it that way. I don't know how to thank you, he said. You already did, I told him. You paid Wolfe. The rest is gravy. After I hung up, I found Wolfe upstairs with his orchids, inspecting a leaf like it might testify falsely. Everything settled? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. For now. I leaned against the doorframe. You ever wonder how many people walk around legally alive but practically dead? Frequently, Wolfe said. It is the natural condition of fools. And legally dead but very much alive? I asked. Wolfe adjusted a pot by a fraction of an inch. Those, he said, are dangerous people. I thought about Eleanor Mortimer. Careful, brilliant, unwilling to be owned by paper or expectation. Somewhere out there, she was breathing freely because she'd planned better than her enemies. As for us, the brownstone was back to normal. Lunch at 1:15. Dinner at 7:45. Silence where it belonged, which, after all, is the most satisfying ending there is. When the truth doesn't shout, doesn't boast, and doesn't need applause. It just sits there, undeniable, and waits for the world to catch up. The days that followed slipped back into routine so neatly, you'd almost believe nothing had happened, which is how Wolfe prefers his victories. Absorbed, not celebrated. The brownstone resumed its quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. Fritz cooked with renewed enthusiasm, the orchids thrived under Wolfe's approving eye, and the phone behaved itself, ringing only when invited. I was filing notes one afternoon when Wolfe spoke without looking up. Archie, he said, the matter is concluded. That's what the police say when they're tired, I replied. What do you say when you're sure? I say nothing, Wolfe answered. Certainty requires no embellishment. I leaned back. You never actually met Eleanor Mortimer. No, Wolfe said. That was intentional. Why? Because, he said, meeting her would have implied supervision. She required none. That tracked. Eleanor Mortimer had never wanted rescuing, only clarity. She'd engineered a situation where betrayal exposed itself, where ambition tripped over its own paperwork, and where the truth emerged not by force, but by inevitability. She used you, I said lightly. Wolfe's eyes flicked to me. She invited me. Same thing, I said. No, Wolfe replied. Use implies exploitation. She offered me a problem. I solved it. That is a transaction. I grinned. You make everything sound like grocery shopping. It is, Wolfe said. One selects carefully. The phone rang then. Once, twice. Wolfe ignored it. I answered. Archie, Eleanor Mortimer's voice said. Not hurried, not afraid, just present. Good to hear from the legally deceased, I said. She smiled through the line. I could hear it. I wanted you to know I'm returning, quietly. To the land of the living? I asked. To my life, she said. On my terms. That's usually the best way, I said. I owe Nero Wolfe more than I can repay, she added. No, I said. You paid him exactly what he wanted. There was a pause. Truth? Control, I said, the intellectual kind. She laughed softly. Please tell him thank you. I will, I said, but don't expect a reply. After I hung up, Wolfe spoke as if he'd heard every word. She will manage her affairs differently now, he said. Trust issues? I asked. Wisdom, Wolfe corrected. Pain is an excellent instructor. The paper later that week confirmed what we already knew. Charges filed, licenses suspended, fortunes frozen and unfrozen with surgical precision. Miriam Lasker's name vanished from polite conversation. Julia Brand resigned quietly and took a position somewhere far less ambitious. Dr. Harrow retired for health reasons that looked suspiciously like conscience, and Eleanor Mortimer reappeared, not with fanfare, but with footnotes, a corrected record, a living signature. The world accepted it the way it accepts most corrections, reluctantly, then completely. One evening, after dinner, Wolfe sat back and regarded his plate with approval. Human folly, he said, is most efficient when it believes itself clever. I nodded. And silence is never empty, Wolfe said. It is merely waiting to be interpreted. I thought about all the noise the case hadn't made. No sirens, no headlines, no chalk outlines. Just people talking when they shouldn't have, touching what wasn't theirs, assuming paper could replace reality. The brownstone held its peace. The city carried on. Somewhere, Eleanor Mortimer was very much alive because she'd understood a simple truth before anyone else did. You don't need to shout to survive. You just need to be right and patient enough to let the others prove you are.